We are back. Let me get the link. Hang on. Where are we? Take 2. Come on, YouTube, hurry up. Well, let me get the link and put it into the old chat. No, the new chat. Ah. Yeah, I don't have access to the chat anymore. Don't. We're back. Hello, everybody. Let me put it here. Oh my God. Come on down, y'all. Posts so I can notify. I can't access that chat anymore. I should have done it all differently. Use Streamlink. There we go. Sorry, guys. I'm back. Hey, Trippin. Hey, Kyle. All right. Right. I don't know. I didn't see you in the stream we just got cut off of. But hey, how's it going? So, I think I have to. Here we go. Let me just go over here. Let everyone know. New stream link. There you go, guys. Oh my gosh, Goldfish, I'm sorry I missed your messages. Huh. Whoops. Are we back? We're back. All right. Thank God from Sonia. Glenn, yes, we are back. We're back. All right. What are we going to talk about now? Because kind of run out of this stuff. Let me have a look at. Oh my gosh, I created a podcast, a robot podcast on the other stuff. Hang on, let me remember what I put in there. What did I put in here? Oh yeah, the double jeopardy stuff. Okay, so everything that we just covered in the previous live stream, I actually created a botcast. That's what I'm going to call them from now on, botcasts. An AI podcast. Do you want to hear it? Wee. I know, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Kevy, for coming back. Hey, Scotty. Sorry about that, guys. It was a server reboot. So if they do a real quick reboot, I can keep the stream going and then eventually it comes back. Or if I've got someone else up here with me and they're on the stream when I disappear, that will keep it going. But this was a pretty long reboot, and so everything disconnected and the stream was prematurely ended on me. So bummer. But anyway, who wants to hear it's only 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes of the bots talking to each other about this habeas corpus crap. Oh, Trippin, you're so cool. Thank you. Thanks for coming back. Welcome back, everybody. All right, let's do that. Gives us something to talk about. So people get annoyed when I do the botcasts, but what it does for me is I can take all of my notes, chuck them all into Notebook LM, and then hear the conversation that they've produced from it. And that gives me a way to talk to you guys about like simplifying the language and the conversation. So generally that's why I do them. But sometimes there's just a good podcast to listen to. So then I'll repost it. But it does annoy some people. They don't often like to hear it. And, often, I won't say often, but about 50% of the time, the AI doesn't agree with me. Like, they'll actually make fun of me because I'm like, the public is outraged, and they'll make fun of me for that. So, yeah, it's 50-50 whether they agree with me. But anyway, sometimes it is hilarious. And I do sometimes post the funny stuff where they're not agreeing with me. So, Glenn, I'm gonna puff puff, not pass while the bots chat. Definitely not annoyed. Good. Some people do actually like it, but some people really do get annoyed. Scotty does like the AI pair. I do. I like the way that they converse. Like, it's definitely showing how far forward we've come in technology. Like, that we mortals have access to, obviously, because AI is way more advanced at what we have access to. It's just, military always gets the first access to everything until they're sick of it and found no use for it anymore. And then, we get the leftovers. Glad you aren't a real astronaut. Horrible confidence levels, low confidence. Elon, not good enough for space. I don't know. He's doing actually all right in space. He just sucks at Starlink. Prince Lover, thank you. Thanks for joining us, Laurie. Good to see you. I also want to. I probably should do this before we play the botcast. Let's say a shout out. I don't want to say names, but I want to shout out everybody who sent me PayPal donations and shouted me coffees and things through the other links. So if you're using YouTube, you're probably under an alias. So if I shout out thank yous through the PayPals, I'm probably going to be using real names, which I don't want to do. But I do want you to know that I appreciate that you've been buying me coffees. Like, coffees are going out of fashion here. So I truly do appreciate it. And with the setbacks that I've had, that have set me back like a year in my build, this is definitely helping. So thank you so much to those people who are sending payments outside of, the usual realms. It's been much appreciated. Okay, so how does it work? You're talking about how's AI work? It's pretty neat. So I do have a video on, like, a tutorial video. It's a live stream on how to work the AI, how to put your notes in, and how to put, your sources in, and then, how to get your AI to, like, focus on what you want it to focus on, or else it just goes off with the pixies. I do have a video on teaching you all of that. If you're interested, if you're interested, give us a yell and I'll put a link in the chat for you. But right now, we are going to have a listen ski. Let me share this tab to the AI. The AI screwed up with this one, so share screen, new note. It's just called new note. So I had a title, I had a whole bunch of stuff, and it was screwing up on me yesterday. And so it's talking about new note. New note is a singular text, and the provided excerpt appears to indicate that it is a brief introduction to the new document. But, so I did have a little hiccup on us yesterday, but essentially, all the case law that I found, all the notes that I found, I actually did get the AI to do a a summary on both the memorandum that was submitted with the habeas petition by Karen Reid, and also the response, the first response from the Commonwealth. So all of that is in here. And then obviously all the case law and a whole bunch of questions that I asked it. Oh my God, this is huge. Like, everything, even how Blueford applies here, because that's what the Commonwealth argued. It just basically gave me a conclusion about the two different affidavits, two different memorandums that have been submitted so far. And then from there, I kind of asked a whole bunch of questions, and I got a whole bunch of things to look up. And then I pasted all of my research into here, and I asked it to create me a podcast. And that basically put into plain English what it was that I essentially wanted to talk about with you guys without getting too technical with it all. So let's go with the podcast. We probably should bring it all the way back to the start, shall we?
Welcome to the deep dive.
The deep
Today, today we're diving into the Karen Reed case and all the legal questions that are swirling around it. You guys have sent in some really interesting articles and legal analyses, and it seems like this case could turn into like a showdown between legal procedure and the very essence of justice.
You know what's so fascinating to me about this case is how it kind of forces us to confront this potential conflict between the substance of justice and then the procedural forms.
Yeah.
Like if a jury decides to acquit someone, but that decision isn't properly like written down and documented, does the state get another chance to try and get a conviction?
Yeah, that is the question, isn't it? So to recap quickly, Karen Reed's first trial ended in a mistrial, but then several jurors came forward and claimed they'd actually agreed to acquit her on two of the charges, including the most serious one, second-degree murder.
Right, and that raises a really important question, like do those private deliberations, those discussions that happen behind closed doors in the jury room, do those actually count as acquittals if they never like make it officially into the court record?
Exactly, and that's where this Bluford v. Arkansas case comes in, right? It's a landmark Supreme Court case that seems really relevant here. Can you break down the Bluford case for us in a way that's easy to understand?
Sure. So in the Bluford case, the defendant was facing some pretty serious charges like capital murder and some lesser charges as well. And during the deliberations, the jury foreperson told the judge that they had all voted not guilty on the capital murder and the first-degree murder charges, but they were stuck on the manslaughter charge.
Okay, so they were deadlocked on the manslaughter charge.
Right. They couldn't agree.
All right.
So the judge told them to keep deliberating, but they just couldn't come to a decision on any of the charges.
So even though they initially voted not guilty on those more serious charges, the defendant could still be retried on them.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what the Supreme Court decided. They ruled that those initial not guilty votes didn't actually count as a formal acquittal because the verdict was never, like, officially announced in court.
So basically, it doesn't really count until it's said out loud in the courtroom. Okay, I'm starting to see why this Bluford case is so important here. But is Reed's situation really the same as the Bluford case? I mean, her defense team seems to think that it's different.
Yeah, they're definitely making that argument, and they have some pretty strong points. Actually, the first thing is that Reed's jurors are saying that their decision to acquit her on those two charges was, like, final from the very beginning of their deliberations. They never changed their minds or wavered on those votes, which is different from the Bluford case, where the jury was still kind of going back and forth on all of the charges.
That is a pretty big difference, it seems. Like, the jury in Reed's case had, like, already made up their minds, even if it wasn't communicated in the official way.
Exactly. And there's another key difference, too. The defense is pointing out that the judge never asked about partial verdicts, even though that's something that's allowed under Massachusetts law.
So are they saying that the judge, like, missed an opportunity to clarify the jury's decision and maybe even end the trial sooner?
Yep.
Exactly. The defense is arguing that because the judge didn't ask about partial verdicts and because the jury had already made up their minds about those two charges, it creates a totally different situation than the Bluford case.
Right. It's like they're saying that the decision had basically been made even if it wasn't delivered in the typical way.
Right. They're saying that the substance of what the jury decided should matter more than the technicalities of the legal procedure.
So basically this all comes down to whether the court
Me
decides
too,
to
Glenn.
stick to a strict interpretation of the law or...
Hey, Glenn, I had a blue Ford once. My very first car was actually a blue Ford. So, yeah.
if they consider the specific circumstances of this case and those statements from the jurors themselves.
You got it. It really highlights how these seemingly small details, like the judge's actions or the timing of the jury's decision, they can have a huge impact on the outcome of a case.
It's fascinating, right? So now let's talk about the Commonwealth side of things. they're pushing back pretty hard, saying that the mistrial was completely justified.
Yeah, and their argument basically hinges on the idea that those statements from the jurors about acquitting Arita, they were made after the trial had already ended and the jury had been dismissed. So legally speaking, the Commonwealth says that timing is really crucial. They're saying that because those statements weren't made like during the official part of the trial, they basically don't count from a legal perspective.
So it's like because they didn't say it in the courtroom, it doesn't matter.
Pretty much. They're basically saying that since there was never an official verdict announced in open court, the double jeopardy rule doesn't apply. It's like if you're playing a game with really specific rules, even if you think you won, it doesn't count unless you follow the rules exactly.
So even if those jurors were totally convinced that Retta was innocent on those 2 charges, it doesn't matter because they didn't say it officially in the courtroom.
That's what the Commonwealth is arguing. They're putting a lot of emphasis on the official record, like those notes.
I'm getting the distinct impression that whiteness doesn't like Elon. But can we please not talk about politics? Just shooting the breeze here on other topics. So I get it, you don't like them. Got the message. Can we move on now? Okay, done. Moving on. You had a blue Ford, Susie, in England. Right, I did in Australia, and Glen Lake had one in America. So Ford's obviously a popular brand all over the place. So I know they called her red. They keep calling her red. So instead of R-E-D, they're saying R-E-A-D as in the past tense of read, red. That's why they're doing that. I've tried to correct them and they keep doing it. So the one downside with the bots is that they don't often get pronunciation right.
That were sent from the jury to the judge while they were deliberating.
Right. I remember those notes. They said that the jury was deadlocked and couldn't agree on a verdict.
Exactly. And the Commonwealth is saying that those notes are the only things that matter because they were like the official record of the trial. They're basically saying everything else is just hearsay, like those statements the jurors made after the trial.
But isn't that kind of like a super rigid interpretation? I mean, if those jurors were really sure about her innocence from day one, like they're claiming, shouldn't that be taken into consideration?
That's exactly what the defense is arguing. They're saying that the Commonwealth is so focused on following the procedure that they're missing the bigger picture. The possibility that an innocent person could be retried for something that the jury already decided on.
Yeah, it does feel like they're kind of glossing over some important details here. What about those confusing jury forms? Are they acknowledging that those forms might have caused some of this confusion?
It's actually really interesting. The Commonwealth completely avoids talking about those confusing jury forms. They don't even consider the possibility that those forms or the lack of clear instructions from the judge might have contributed to the whole communication breakdown.
Wow.
Oh my God, Michelle, if it was so easy, did you see how much notes I had in there to change everything to read? Like I had like 15 to 20 pages per statement or per memorandum from, I think it was 30 from the Commonwealth, 20 from, so 50 all up just in the memorandums. And then all the research that I did was READ. And so it would have been going through this like forever trying to change everything to read. So yeah, sometimes I just can't be bothered going through everything and changing it to REED to make them say it right. But it does annoy people. It does annoy people that they don't get it right when I'm too lazy to go and change all of my notes over. But it was over 150 pages of notes where it was all spelled READ. So I apologize that they're not saying it right. English is a difficult language. Multiply words spelled exactly multiple words say the same thing but a different pronunciation. So if I read the document, it is spelled READ. But if I am going to read the document, then that is also READ. Hence the confusion.
That seems like a pretty big thing to ignore. And what about the whole thing with the foreperson? You know, like how he wouldn't let the jury ask questions and insisted on a majority vote before they could talk to the judge?
You're right, they don't address that either. Instead, they're focusing a lot of their argument on a statement from one specific juror who contacted them after the trial. It's believed that this juror was actually the foreperson.
So what did this juror say? Did he mention anything about those acquittals?
It's interesting because he didn't say anything about those unanimous votes for acquittal on 2 counts. His statement was mostly about his concerns over external pressures on the jury and like potential safety risks.
Hold on. So the Commonwealth is basing a big part of their argument on a statement from the same juror who, according to the other jurors, was preventing them from having proper deliberations.
Yeah, it's a pretty ironic situation. It seems like they're focusing on the evidence that supports their desire for a retrial while ignoring all the other stuff that might contradict their position, like the statements from other jurors and those procedural issues that might have affected the first trial.
That's kind of concerning. It makes you wonder if they really care about finding the truth or if they just want to get a conviction no matter what happened in the first trial.
It's a valid concern, and it definitely highlights a big tension in our legal system. You know, the tension between strictly following procedures and actually trying to make sure that justice is served.
So to recap, we have the defense arguing that those procedural problems, combined with the jury's clear decision to acquit on 2 counts, make a retrial seem really unfair. And on the other side, the Commonwealth is holding on to a really narrow interpretation of double jeopardy and cherry-picking evidence to support their case.
You summed it up perfectly. This whole case is a battle between blindly following procedure and a more nuanced view of justice. You know, one that takes into account the unique circumstances of this particular trial.
All right, so let's dig into those procedural problems a little bit more. How could they potentially affect the federal court's decision? Where do we even begin with all this?
Let's start with how the judge handled those jury forms. Remember how she initially dismissed the defense's concerns about the forms being confusing and only later agreed to change them? This inconsistency, along with the lack of clear instructions on how to use the new forms, could be seen as a mistake on the judge's part.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder if that contributed to the whole miscommunication between the judge and the jury. Could the court see this as evidence that the trial wasn't conducted as fairly as it should have been?
Definitely, it raises the question of whether the judge's actions, intentional or not, might have prevented the jury from fully communicating their decision. And that's a key argument for the defense, because if the court agrees that the jury's real verdict, including those acquittals, wasn't properly recorded because of these errors, then having a new trial could be seen as a violation of Reed's constitutional rights.
That seems like a pretty solid argument. But what about the foreperson's actions? How do you think the court will factor that into their decision?
Yeah, the foreperson's actions definitely throw a wrench in things. How much weight do you think the court will give to his refusal to relay the jury's questions to the judge and, like, insisting on a majority vote before they could even communicate with her?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And I think the defense is going to hit that point hard. They're going to argue that
I'm not sure they're going to hit it hard, but I would like them to, because that communication breakdown between the jury getting their communication to the judge was the foreperson. I don't know that they're going to, but I do think it's important.
what he did was completely out of line and that it messed with the jury's ability to do its job. You know, like it basically created a wall between the jury and the judge so they couldn't get clarification when they really needed it, especially with those confusing forms.
And if the court agrees with that, what could it mean for Reed's case?
Well, if the court decides that the foreperson's actions were wrong and that they blocked the jury from deliberating properly, it definitely makes the defense's argument a lot stronger. It supports their claim that the mistrial wasn't because the jury was truly stuck, but because of all these roadblocks that prevented them from reaching a clear verdict. So basically, we have those confusing forms, the judge's kind of inconsistent handling of the situation, and the foreperson's actions all kind of working together to create an environment where the jury couldn't do their job properly.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the core of the defense's argument, right? That the jury actually did reach a verdict, including those acquittals on 2 charges, but they were stopped from reporting it because of all these procedural hiccups.
It's a pretty bold move trying to convince the court to look past the letter of the law and really consider what happened in that jury room.
It is, but it also points to a really important principle of justice that someone shouldn't be punished because of procedural errors, especially when there's evidence that a fair decision was actually made. Of course, the Commonwealth has a different take on this. They say that the judge was right to declare a mistrial because the jury said they were deadlocked.
So they're saying that even with all those procedural issues, the fact that the jury couldn't agree is enough to justify the mistrial. and having another trial.
Yeah, they're sticking to a very literal interpretation of double jeopardy, basically saying that since no official verdict was given in the courtroom, the state can try Reed again. They're kind of downplaying those procedural issues and focusing on the deadlock as the main reason for another trial.
This case really shows how tricky it can be to balance those procedural rules with actually trying to achieve a just outcome. It makes you think about the purpose of those rules and if they always lead to the right result.
It does. It makes us ask ourselves, are those rules meant to be unbreakable barriers or more?
It makes us ask ourselves why the judge is expecting the jury to know all of this crud. Like, it's got to come from her. Her instruction is what has to be first and foremost if any juror is going to understand any of this stuff. So that's first and foremost in my book.
Like guidelines that allow for fairness and flexibility in unusual cases like this one? It's a question that legal experts have been arguing about forever, and this case really brings it to the forefront.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive into all the complexities of our legal system. So where do you think all of this is headed? What's your gut feeling about how the court will rule?
Honestly, it's really hard to say. The federal court has a tough decision to make. They have to balance years of legal precedent that prioritizes those formal verdicts with the specific circumstances of this case, where it seems like procedural errors might have hidden the jury's true decision.
So let's say they rule in favor of Reed and say that those acquittals were basically valid, even though they weren't formally announced. What would that mean for her case?
If they side with the defense, then it's very likely that she won't be retried, at least on those two charges, because the double jeopardy rule would prevent the state from trying her again on charges where the jury had already made a decision.
That would be a major victory for Reed. And it would send a strong message that courts need to consider the substance of justice, even when those procedural rules seem to get in the way.
For sure, it set a precedent for future cases where similar procedural issues come up. It would tell us that courts are willing to look beyond a strict reading of the rules when there's evidence that those rules have prevented a just outcome.
Well, Deep Divers will be following this case closely and keep you updated on what happens. This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about when it comes to the balance between legal procedures and trying to achieve true justice.
Absolutely.
Indeed, it did. So, this person is getting really annoying. Here's the thing. We don't have to listen to you on our live streams. So, you're out. All right. No, I'm not AI. But I do rely on AI a lot to do my research. So I don't admit that like openly to people because everybody hates the AI. I'm actually all for AI, depending on whose hands it's in. So there's that. If it's being used responsibly, which I tend to try to do, then AI is useful, we'll say. So what are the disadvantages of considering each charge separately? The disadvantages. Let's ask the AI. What are the disadvantages? Oops, separately. Let's ask the AI for you. Do a little research live. I stole your thunder, did I? Don't. Correct, Amundo. In that sense, I am AI. Right, the AI does not have its own brain. It's only as good as the operator and the sources available to it. And some days I do get non-responses from AI. Some days I've just got to wing it and do it myself because it'll just say, I'm trying to access sources and then it'll just, end itself and go, no sources. Then I'll ask it again. It'll go, yes, okay, let me look at the sources. Nope, can't find any sources. Died again. So it's not always reliable like that either. So you just got to come back later and try again. So when the AI, because it's all on a main server, when AI is overloaded, it can sometimes not even get its own sources. So, but if you understand how programming works, and I do because that's my day job, then you're a little bit lenient on it. It came up with the wrong answer, or it couldn't find the sources, knowing full well that the sources are actually there, etc., etc. So let's pop that question up on the screen for everyone to look at. If we go this way and then switch over to that question, hang on, where's the question gone? Here we go. So the disadvantages. The disadvantages of considering each charge separately in the context of Miss Reed's case. So this is what the AI tells me, and then from here I can actually go and research each of the points that it makes and find out if it's correct on those points. But if it has hastily come to a conclusion on a point and I find a whole bunch of other points that contradict it, I'll tell it that. When I'm telling the AI, you said this, but then I found out that, it will correct itself, and it'll actually remember that for the next person that comes along and asks a similar question. So that's why they're called learning models. They're learning from our inputs to be more accurate, essentially. And a lot of people think that AI is this new thing that we've never been exposed to before, and it's so freaking scary. And that's a load of rubbish as well, because AI has been used by banks, especially the monetary system, banks, insurance companies, household loans, the whole thing. Like, they've all been using this AI for years, and they use it to predict things like if you're in the insurance industry, you want a prediction on how many claims have been made for fire, for example. So if in the California fire belt area, how many claims have we had for fire? Do we insure people for fire, or do we increase the premiums for that? Like, so it's been making these decisions for especially the finance industry for at least 20 years now. We've not seen it ourselves. We're only at the other end, the receiving end of what it's decided for that company. But the fact that it's been there doing this shit for ages, even the banking sector has been using it for at least 20 years. We're all afraid because we can ask it questions directly now, but we're not afraid that it's been making our financial decisions for us for the past 25 or 30 years. So I just find that all very odd that people have this idea it's all new and threatening. So anyway, let's answer the question. Disadvantages of considering each charge separately in the context of Miss Reed's case. While considering each charge separately might seem like a fair and logical approach, it presents several legal and strategic disadvantages for Miss Reed's defence, particularly in her federal habeas petition and double jeopardy claim. So the first point it comes up with is weakening the double jeopardy argument. The strongest defence argument is that the mistrial was unnecessary because the jury had reached acquittals on 2 counts. If the court considers each charge separately, the state can argue that count 2, the charge on which a jury was deadlocked, justified a mistrial, even if counts 1 and 3 were already decided. This allows a Commonwealth to isolate the deadlock on one charge, which is what they're actually seeking to do, to justify the mistrial, instead of considering the entire case holistically. If the court accepts this reasoning, it may permit retrial on all counts, even those that the jury had already acquitted on. So that's in context with the habeas petition. it also allows the Commonwealth to argue that the mistrial was obviously necessary because at least one charge was deadlocked, and it undermines the argument that the jury's verdict was structurally obstructed. Try saying that with your mouth full. Weaknesses. The remedy the defense is seeking, it weakens the remedy that the defense is seeking for all of those reasons. And it ignores the broader issue of fairness. So, I mean, that's the whole reason that we have it in front of the court, is because of the issue of fairness. So did that answer your question? Am I the only one disturbed by the fact that a company developed a language that revealed this week called Gibberlink that allows two AIs to communicate more effectively than spoken words? I don't know. This week, I just did a whole podcast. I've been doing podcasts for weeks with two AIs communicating. They even laugh at each other's jokes. Not saying that they are a good argument for AI. I'm saying that they have existed for the last 20 years, so why are we suddenly scared of them? That's all. Like, oh my God, they're going to take over the world. Well, they've been around for 30 years and they haven't taken over the world yet. And that's because we do have, on the most part, we do have a bunch of people who are in the development end who don't want them to take over the world. And so we're trying to stop them from taking over the world. As long as we're aware of that, I think we're in a good position. But I don't know if any of you have read Asimov's trilogy on that subject, but it's actually it's a good read, but it's based around a story, but it's also based around how much humans will let AI do whatever it wants. Like, will we be the ones who are responsible for building in the safeguards that stop it from doing what we're afraid of? And since we're the ones that program it and create it, then obviously we are. But anyway, Asimov's trilogy is a pretty good read if you want to get into that side of it, the philosophical arguments that it poses. So AI frightens everybody, but it's, like I said, it's been around for 30 years. It didn't frighten you when it was running the banks in the financial system. It didn't bother you when it was running the car sales trade system. But that's because you didn't know about it. So if we hang on, what? Not if we put a brain in this plug. Skynet is building Terminators. Yeah, I'm not sure I follow that. I don't trust what the military is using it for. I absolutely am afraid of what the military would use it for. That is definitely a worry. Yes, Kevin, you're obviously familiar with Asimov. The 3 laws of robotics, often shortened to the 3 laws or Asimov's laws, are a set of rules devised by science fiction author Isaac Asimov. Correct, but the whole story is based on the philosophy of what we would give them the power to do. How would we control what power they have? So, is AI non-binary? I see what you did there, Glenn. I don't know. It might be hexadecimal. But yeah. Who's Hal? Really? Okay. Hal is the yes, the ship computer in the 2001 Space Odyssey. That one. I find it Asimov's Law 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Well, Asimov's law 1 would actually rule out the military having access to AI, because that's all about harming human beings. But I did like Asimov's take on it. In Asimov's 3 laws, the military shouldn't have access to it. Technology has come a long way in 30 years, though. Internet was just coming out. Right, but just because the internet was just coming out 30 years ago, we still had networks that were interconnected, and we still had AI that was running on those networks. So at least at least 20 years before the internet came out, my ex-partner and I were working on those networks. Even though they weren't internet, they were still interconnected. Asimov's law 2, we're getting the rundown now from Kevy. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. See, again, that would rule out the military having it, right? This is why I liked his philosophy. So he really did think out the philosophy of it before he wrote the story. So law 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or the second law. You see why Asimov's laws are philosophically sound as far as AI goes. It sums it all up. Thank you, Kevy. Hexadecimal is just another way of interpreting binary, exactly. They understand logic, and humans are not always illogical. How do you know? Hang on. Sorry. They say if you are dead, you don't know if you're dead. Same thing, apples to being stupid. How do you know if you are talking to an AI? AIs do not use words like don't. Yeah, see, but Bob, those podcasts that I'm doing shows that they do a lot of things. They even talk over the top of each other. There was one episode that I produced where instead of saying ing, ing, they were doing the in, Canton. So if they were saying, hunting, they were going, yeah, hunting, and they did it too much. They like overdid it in that episode. I actually did upload the episode because I was waiting to see if anyone noticed how often they cut the ings back to in, because it was really annoying to the extent that they did it. So yeah, that was an interesting episode, but nobody else picked up on it. So in TNG, the bots choose their own demise to save the humans. Exactly. Trooper Paul. Indeed, right? Yeah, what could go wrong? The thing is, they'll never think like us. They never will think like us because we make decisions based on feelings. And feelings are the one thing that we can't program a bot to have. Because feelings come about due to life experience and emotions from the heart and things that we can't actually program. So the idea that we could make them do that is totally out of the realm of possibility with our current technology. So no, it's never going to happen that they actually do think like us. Cool. I find it interesting too, Leslie. People are so surprised that a computer programmer is fascinated by computer programs. I get abused all the time in the comments, like, hey, if you're going to watch a channel of a computer geek, you're going to have to expect computer geeky shit. It just goes with, it's part and parcel, right? So yeah, I think one of the most common, like, uses for the AI right now is like, and this has been around for at least 30 or 40 years, having, well, since the internet at least, having the AI fielding questions from the customer. So you don't have to have, like a whole office full of people answering phones, for example. If people can get their general questions answered by having the AI answer the questions, and then when the AI can't answer the questions, they're now put onto an operator. That's probably one of the biggest uses for it, but it's also one of the biggest peeves, I guess, of customer relationships. Most customers just want to be able to speak to a person. So you wonder what they look like in other cases. We've seen a lot of Sally Port videos in other cases, and they're a lot clearer than this. But that specific camera, we did a lot of shows on that specific camera and what it should look like, a lot of them. So, and it doesn't look nothing like what they showed in court. Bob says, my company forced all our employees to do about 40 hours of computer basic training on AI. I still don't understand AI. Yep. But even this AI pair, you use feign emotion. They do, exactly. They feign it so that it's more relatable to us as humans. Yep, exactly. And they even feign laughing. Like their jokes aren't even funny, but they'll laugh at each other. They even feign that part of it. But still, the synthesis of human emotions still doesn't quite hit home as the actual interaction of human emotions. You can still feel that difference. And when I say feel it, I'm even using the term feel in the sense that AI couldn't feel it. You get what I'm saying? So that's a feeling that we couldn't program them to have, to sense that doesn't feel natural, that laughter, that joke, or that response to that comment. So hold on now. Trooper Ball is starring one of 2025's most anticipated sequels, The Seventh Sense. I hear crime scenes. So Bob says, I was impressed with Aussie's use of AI to compare video with the car's downloaded black box data. Yeah, well, I was unaware that AI was actually at that level. Well, our current access to it was at that level. I think I was aware that it could do that, but at a military level, they will compare what's going on in a video, like from a satellite footage, for example, to alert, the military, shit's going down, quick. So I was aware that they could do it. I just wasn't aware that we had access to it yet. So I paid for a subscription and found out that, yes, we do, so long as you're paying for it. Machine learners code may be alive. Dr. Michael Levin of Tufts University in Massachusetts has some fascinating experiments and insights into nested hierarchies of agency and awareness. Very cool. Thanks for that. For the first time you weren't joking today. That's an important thing to look into. Did you find a case in Massachusetts? No, we didn't. So not only were phones destroyed and things lost, but cameras destroyed. Exactly. Nothing to see here, right? That's why I always just keep repeating, speak to a representative. Right. Keep yelling cuss words in the phone. Yeah, that doesn't work so good, because then it hangs up on you. You won't actually get through to a operator if you're yelling cuss words in the phone. Well, I don't know how it works in America. I've never cussed at a AI in America. I've never cussed an AI in Australia because it's a friggin' robot. What is cussing going to do? But I do know that they do have an alert system that says if you're cussing at the AI, you're not ever going to get through to an operator to cuss at them, essentially. Glenda says, my husband is an electrical engineer for a tech company in Boston, and he thinks you are very impressive. Well, thank you, Glenda's hubby. Thank you for the comment. I don't know. You know, you're either familiar with computers or you're not. There seems to be no gray in between. Like, I'm just vaguely familiar. I kind of get what you're saying. But yeah, you're either knee deep in it or you're not, is what I've kind of found with just generally talking computers with people. But the hardest thing for me to do is to translate it to layman's terms. And a lot of people who are in the tech industry do have this issue. They would actually prefer not to because they can't be bothered. But I think that's what I rely on AI for the most. I get the tech side of it, but how do I explain this to a layperson, without getting tongue-tied or going too deep or whatever? So that's what the AI actually helps me do. What did Jen photograph that night? And like, nobody knows. Where do I live? I live right on the border between Queensland and New South Wales, an area that most people around the world would know as Byron Bay area-ish. I live in the hinterland behind Byron Bay. The only thing I can beat AI at is cussing. It won't cuss back at you. So how can you beat it at cussing if it won't even join the fight? These answering systems are the worst. Yes, it's a thing that most people hate. But it does make it so here's the payoff. Here's the balance, right? The balancing factor is, do you want to pay 50 times more for that service that you're buying because they have to employ humans to answer the phone for every single inquiry? Or would you rather pay 50% less, 50 times less for that same product or service because you can get your general answers dealt with by an AI, and then when the AI can't deal with it any further, then you get a service person. That means they're hiring less service people. Do you get what I'm saying? So if they're hiring less service people, then you're getting a cheaper service. So there's a balancing act there as to, being careful what you wish for. But in some cases, are actually designed to make you hang up and go away. I do agree with that, especially the government ones. They absolutely are designed that way. So, where are we? Scotty says, a common storyline in sci-fi are highly advanced humanoid robot life forms, sentient beings with rights akin to humans. Right, that is a common sci-fi story. Actually, you know what I found yesterday? I found a really freaking good story. If people want to know why people like myself are interested in AI and the development of AI and the development of humanoids and all of that sort of stuff, you look no further than this story I was looking into yesterday. I don't want to put it up on the screen because it's probably going to copyright strike me. But let me get the name of the video. It was before all of that. I'm just looking through my history to find the video for you. Here, the incredible story of the first human cyborg, Peter, the human cyborg, is a documentary that chronicles the extraordinary journey of Dr. Peter Scott Morgan, a renowned robotics scientist diagnosed with motor neurons disease, which is the same disease that what's his name had? Forget his name. And so, in that sense, people who are on the good side of robotics and AI and all that sort of stuff, they want to make life easier for people who are completely bound to a wheelchair, and they can't operate, they can't even operate their fingers to make their wheelchair move. So the interest in the biomechanics, and then the military is where is that contrast that we're grappling with. Like, we're using it to harm people, but the reason we invented it was not to harm, it was to help people. So in that sense, I'm still on the let's help people side. A lot of people hate Elon Musk, but he's also one of the pioneers in the connecting the brain activity to the biomechanics, so that people who are completely paraplegic can send signals to their biomechanical, extremities to operate them, essentially. Yes, Dr. Hawkins, that's who I was talking about. So it's the same disease that he has. So let me just I'm not going to play it, but I will get at least a picture of him up on the screen so you can see the video. Shut up with the ads. Let's go skip that ad. So share the screen. It's a very interesting video. I recommend it. So it talks about, we look at this from the we're afraid of it military angle, but when you think about the reason for us having developed it in the first place, Neuralink, thank you, Sanya. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It was developed by people who had this interest in, even just even this video, calling him a human cyborg, he's not. He's got parts of his body that are going to be mechanical, yes. So in that sense, it makes it cyborg. But it's scary for people to say cyborg because of all the sci-fi movies that focus on, scary shit. So, but in this sense, this guy's got no control over his body. He can barely move his hands. So in this sense, this stuff is actually valuable to humankind. And is helpful to humankind. So, but it does raise some other ethical issues. Like, you step outside of Asimov's laws, and then you step inside of how do we make it fair? Like, that's a whole other realm of philosophy. If we can help this dude stand up and walk, who's got no control over his body at all, by turning into a human cyborg, how do we make that affordable and fair for everybody to obtain? So there's also, that philosophy that we still struggle with now, because this shit's expensive. It ain't cheap. It's very expensive. And if we're going to, let me move to, he's had a lot of operations to install this stuff, like, into his brain, and how to connect it to different parts of the central nervous system, how to connect it to the brain, which is something that Elon Musk is actually a leader in that technology. I thought we had a diagram of the machine, how they were going to hook him up to the machine, which I'm just looking for. There we go. So he would have a wheelchair type thing, but he's literally standing up in the wheelchair type thing, essentially. And he can operate it with his brain, rather than, like, he can just think, I want to go forward, I want to go left, I want to go right. He can just think that, and it will operate those things for him. So, these are all pretty much intelligent reasons and humanitarian reasons to actually consider, why we would go down this path of the transhumanism. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. The transhumanism is probably the better way to describe it instead of cyborg. But yeah, these are all genuine reasons to go down this path. It's the fact that the military gets this shit first, which brings into the equation who gets access to it and to what extent do they get access to it. So if we combine now Asimov's law philosophy with transhumanism, I think we're getting actually closer to answers that are constructive for humanity and less destructive, if that makes sense. So you have to first believe in God for it to be scary that it's not God's will. You have to believe in God in the way that you're saying it here, because there are different ways of believing in God. So, see, one of the things about God's will, if God made us in the image of himself, then we have will as well, right? Then our will is also God's will, correct? There's different ways of looking at this philosophically. And I know that philosophy actually has a common ground with the Bible. Does he collapse on the floor if he's... There's a Starlink glitch. He's not necessarily connected to the interwebs. It's just his brain is connected to his body. But that's funny as shit. They experiment. Yeah, I don't know what they're experimenting with in the world. They're experimenting with a lot of stuff. It's turning into a Black Mirror episode, right? Anyway, I just wanted to point out that there are actually good people who have good intentions behind some of this stuff. So, do you just leave someone completely incapacitated because that's God's will? No, if you've got the means of helping them, you help them. Like, it's the same as if it's God's will that they're incapacitated, why would you even help them get on the toilet or have a bath? Because it's God's will. So it's kind of the same thing in the way that I look at it. But anyway. Right. And the data doesn't lie, but people do. It all comes back to the people, right? Anyway. All right. I'm glad I could have entertained you all for a couple of hours. I'm glad you all made it back here for, a little bit more entertainment. If there's anything else you want me to go through or you're ready to wrap up, give me a 1 if you want to continue, and I'll try and find something else interesting to talk about. Beat a sword into a plowshare and raise food for the army. Right. If AI is only designed to help humans, then that rules out greed, right? It's only to help humans, then that rules out greed, doesn't it? You want to continue? All right. Find another subject. All right, hit me with a subject. What do you want me to do with the AI? You want me to ask it any questions about this habeas? Do we have any questions left over about the habeas stuff? Do we have any questions about that left over? That's the first thing. Secondly, do we have any questions about Judge Bev doing a bunch of silly stuff with these dismissals and stuff? Because I kind of feel like she's in a corner now. I kind of feel like she's got no way out of this dismissal without being outright evil. Let's have a look at what I actually researched on that chain of custody issues, chain of custody, admissibility, exclusion. It might have been in yesterday's discussions. God, it was going to be going way back to prior to all of that shit. Where we are at with the defense. Where we at with the current arguments. If Judge Bev doesn't see that the motion to dismiss is not concerned with lost or destroyed evidence, that it's actually concerned with misconduct, she's putting herself in a tricky position. Predict a next move, you reckon? I really do think that she's putting herself in a very tricky position. She's in the corner. Yes. What she does from here is going to expose a lot of things, because we are not at the first dismissal where we're guessing anymore. We've moved on past that. We are now on, I think, third dismissal. Didn't we have one prior to trial, motion to dismiss before prior to trial, a motion to dismiss during trial that the Commonwealth hadn't met their burden? I think we're on number 3 now, aren't we? We all know the Lexus didn't hit John. The problem for the Commonwealth is they botched the investigation so badly that there are no other suspects that they can charge with his death. They have botched it pretty bad. This is a very sad side effect of what they have done, because they've allowed all of the evidence to be destroyed. They've allowed just so much to go wrong that there's no way to prove who did it now. Scott is wondering what Bev is going to do now. Also, the defence's motion to delay the motion to dismiss hearings scheduled for next week. Her ruling won't post until Monday now. That's right. That's right. She's doing everything last second. Because we are at this point where this is not the first or even second dismissal motion, we are at a point where we've got a federal habeas petition in. That habeas petition is going to hinge on whether Bev abused her power or not. And then if Bev's over here in this dismissal motion, I sound that with a mouthful. If she's over here abusing her power in the dismissal motion as well, she's now in a completely different position, because now she's got the federal courts watching what she's doing. So she absolutely only cares about herself. So if it comes down to it, and she's got to throw someone under a bus, it's going to be D.A. Morrissey. It ain't going to be. She ain't going to do it for him. She ain't going to take the rap for him. Yes, it wasn't botched. It was purposeful. But it was even not looking into other possibilities. Even that was purposeful. So you're exactly right, Colin. Yeah, it wasn't allowed in. It shouldn't have been allowed in. This is what makes this dismissal motion not a lost or destroyed evidence motion that the Commonwealth is focusing on in its rebuttal. This is what makes it a misconduct motion. This is directly addressing misconduct regarding the evidence. That's why she's in a different position this time. Anyway, I did do a bit of research on this yesterday. So let's come back to some of the basics. Let me scroll back. The implications. Here we go. So we talked about this yesterday. You know, one of the implications that she's increasing public awareness of her biasness and her judicial misconduct. And she's actually relying on the public perception that she's not biased and that she's a fair and equal judge. Let's go back a little bit further than that. In addition to suddenly creating a chain of custody. Yeah, let's talk about the sudden creation of the chain of custody documents. Oh my God, I must have asked 100 questions. I'm still scrolling looking for something that we haven't discussed yet. In relation to consent to mistrial. Here's an interesting point that I haven't covered on the habeas side of it. Since I'm scrolling past it, let me pop that on the screen. So the TUI or instruction, or the Allen instruction at the second reported impasse, does it waive double jeopardy? Because the Commonwealth is claiming that that would waive her double jeopardy. But the Allen instruction and the TUI instruction at a prior impasse does not necessarily waive double jeopardy, because an Allen charge is a judicial instruction urging deadlocked jurors to continue deliberating and reconsider their positions to reach a verdict. It's the opposite to accepting that they've come to an impasse. Waiving double jeopardy requires an explicit, voluntary, and unequivocal consent to a mistrial. A defense request for an Allen instruction at an earlier impasse does not mean the defense later consented to a mistrial at a later date. So unless the defense expressly agreed to the mistrial at the time it was declared, then double jeopardy protections remain intact. So you haven't waived, nothing that the defense did waived her right to double jeopardy. Nothing. There was nothing from the first impasse through to the final mistrial where she waived her rights. So the Allen charge does not equate to consent. What is an Allen charge? I might do the Tui Rodriguez. Let's compare. I'm just going to write this as a note. Compare the Allen charge, the Allen instruction, with the Tui Rodriguez instruction. Because I think they both mean the same thing, but I just want to be sure. What is an Allen charge? It is from Allen versus United States, 1896. Is given when a jury is deadlocked to encourage further deliberation. It's the opposite to accepting that they're in a deadlock. The defense requesting an Allen charge instruction earlier in deliberations does not mean they later consented to a mistrial. So it's also under, I think that's federal case law, Second Circuit, United States versus Razmelovich. A request for an Allen charge does not imply consent to a mistrial later in deliberations. And then United States versus Goldstein, consent to an Allen charge does not override a later objection to a mistrial. So how it applies here is that the defense requests an Allen charge at the second impasse to avoid a mistrial. If the judge ignored this request or later declared a mistrial, well, she didn't. She did issue that instruction, but I think it was a Tui Rodriguez that she issued. Mistrial must be the absolute last resort. So let's compare the Allen instruction with the Tui Rodriguez instruction as it relates to consent to mistrial. as it relates to Commonwealth's contention that it is consent to mistrial. Let's have a look what we come up with. While it's thinking and doing its thing, let me come back here. We boots on the ground, peeps, are not even sure there will be court Tuesday. It now hinges on Bev's decision whether or not to delay the hearing for the dismissal, or whether she even wants to allow a hearing for the dismissal. If she doesn't allow the hearing for the dismissal, she's creating another issue for herself in the federal courts. It seems to me the plea bargaining system is being abused, making it governmental blackmail with malice. I agree with that, Colin, entirely. That was why I was looking into the other case. What's the other case I was looking into? God, my memory's shot. It gets worse as I get older. That's why I was looking into Franklin. Florida versus Franklin by Tyrone Tucker, because that's precisely what happened. They used it as blackmail. They got him to plead to robbery, and then they said they would drop all the murder charges, but he wasn't involved in any of it. He wasn't even involved in the robbery. So they used it as blackmail to make him look guilty in the robbery. So in the eyes of the public, he still looks guilty of the murders. But he took the plea because it gives him the ability to be out of jail and hire a lawyer and get things underway so that he can sue their pants off. But it is exactly what you say. It was blackmail. It absolutely was. So, hey, Kebby, thanks so much for being here as long as you have. Enjoy your day. And thanks for everything. Yes. Thank you. And thank you. Have a good day. Yes, so we're just looking at comparing the Allen and the TUI instruction that constitute consents to a mistrial. So the Commonwealth's argument that a previous Allen instruction or any other instruction constitute consents to that consent to a mistrial is legally flawed. And below is a detailed comparison between the two. Okay, so the Allen instruction encourages deadlocked juries to reconsider their positions in order to reach a unanimous verdict. And the Tui Rodriguez instruction reminds jurors that they are not required to agree. They cannot reach a verdict in good conscience, often using combination with the Allen instruction. So the legal implications for the Allen instruction allows the Allen charge, but emphasizes that it must not coerce jurors. It urges them to attempt to resolve their differences. And then in the Tui Rodriguez instruction, ensures that jurors do not feel coerced into a verdict. The application to mistrial consent, an Allen instruction is not a defense request for a mistrial. Instead, it seeks to avoid trial, which we just described. The Tui Rodriguez instruction does not equate to a defense consent to a mistrial because it protects a defendant's right against coercion rather than waiving double jeopardy protections. So there you go. Neither of those is actually federally or by the state equivalent to consent to a mistrial, because both is trying to achieve exact opposite to a mistrial. And I have heard some lawyers continue today to refer to the Allen or TUI charge kind of like non-explicit consent to a mistrial. It's not. It's the opposite, because they're asking the jury to keep deliberating. Now, seems Bev is in a race against. Yeah, that's where we're at. That's precisely where we're at, Scotty. Because Bev wants trial 2 underway before the federal court throws a wrench into it. Exactly. Exactamundo. So yeah, essentially, this whole argument is not even an argument, because the Allen instruction and the Tui instruction is the opposite to consenting to a mistrial, having rights to double jeopardy. Neither of them does that. I don't agree with any of the lawyers who are making that assumption. I think they need to read more about what the purpose of Allen and Tui Rodriguez are, rather than assuming that it's some sort of consent, because that's what the Commonwealth claims. What is the point of having 2.0 underway prior to the federal court getting involved? If she rushes into it and she kicks off trial 2.0, holy shit. All right. Let's turn this around so I can get to this, the way you've posed this question, right? The point of having the federal court get involved is to stop trial 2.0. Do you follow? So the federal court could put a stay on trial 2.0 because they're still deciding whether they're going to review the habeas petition. They're not at a point where they've decided. They are at a point where they think she has at least met her burden to get a response from the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth has responded, and now she has responded to their response. So we are at a point where I think on March the 5th we'll know whether the federal court is going to review her petition. So once that goes, she can't start trial 2.0. And if she tries to, if she doesn't make preparations to stay it herself, the federal court, I think they will do it themselves. So to turn this around, yes, Scott's following me. To turn this around to answer your question, the way the order that you've posed it, what's the benefit of having 2.0 underway, is that if the federal court says, yeah, we're going to review it on March the 5th, we accept the petitioner's complaint and we're going to review how we're going to resolve this, then they can either put a stay on this trial, which gives Bev no choice, or, as Scott suggests, they could actually resolve this by dismissing the entire case, like all 3 charges. They could say, you know what, Bev, you screwed up because you didn't give the jury instructions correctly. You confused the hell out of the jury with these forms. All of this shit went down before you dismissed. So your error is actually prior to that. Then when you dismissed, you refused to ask them. So now you've got cumulative error, which has caused all of these issues. The federal court may actually throw the entire thing out. So that would be the problem with trying to go ahead, force 2.0 underway before the federal court has ruled, because you can't be trying her for shit that the federal court's throwing out and dismissing. So that's the issue there. The slightest hint of double jeopardy, a good judge recuse themselves. This is a malicious prosecution. Indeed, it is. Yes, I do believe that the SJC screwed up. AJ mentioned on the 25th he has to be at a federal hearing, but I don't know if it's regarding Miss Reed's case. He mentioned that on the 25th, that he has a federal hearing on the 5th. Yes. So that's why it got thrown up in the air whether that Bev's hearing was going to be the 4th or the 5th. And I still haven't got that clear whether she's going to try and do a hearing on the same day that they would all go to be in federal court. That would be an issue. The rush for 2.0 could be railroad. It's absolutely railroading to be unprepared. Exactly what it is. And that's why Hank's burying them in discoveries. Exactly. So a Fed hearing is on the 5th, right? But we don't know what day Bev's got her hearing in. You would think she would dismiss it. You would think. So yeah, let's continue with this reading of why the Commonwealth's argument is wrong. The Commonwealth claims that the defence previously requested an Allen instruction when the jury was deadlocked. The defendant consented to that by doing that, the defendant consented to the eventual mistrial. However, this argument fails legally for the following reasons. 1. Consent to a mistrial has to be unequivocal and voluntary. The legal standard for consent to a mistrial falls under United States versus Dinitz, 1976. The Supreme Court held that consent to a mistrial is unequivocal and voluntary to waive double jeopardy protections. Oregon versus Kennedy, 1982, further established that a mistrial prompted by prosecutorial misconduct does not count as consent if the defense was goaded into it. Interesting. I don't think they were goaded into it, but I think that trying to present the as consent is a form of goading them, like at the point where they were asking Judge Bev to, hey, please poll the jury. Why this undermines argument? Requesting an Allen charge is not an unequivocal request for a mistrial. It's the opposite. It's the defense. The defense sought to avoid a mistrial by encouraging the jury to reach a verdict. If an Allen charge failed and the judge declared a mistrial, that decision was the judge's, not the defense's. If the Commonwealth pressured the judge to declare a mistrial, despite continued deliberations, then the mistrial was not truly necessary. Manifest necessity standard was not met. Well, we know that didn't happen, but these two are definitely applicable. So, Allen and Tui Rodriguez's instructions are not requests to end the trial. They are requests to continue deliberating. I don't know how many got to be said. Allen encourages deliberation, and Tui Rodriguez emphasizes independence of the jury. So those are the key cases. I've seen both of these actually quoted in the defense's arguments. Double jeopardy prevents retrying a defendant if a mistrial was not justified. Obviously, we know all of that. The final verdict, the Commonwealth's argument fails. So essentially, it is complete misinterpretation that the Allen charge, or even a Tui Rodriguez, is waiving double jeopardy or giving permission for retrial, or that even suggesting that you're favorable of trial, because both of them are asking for the opposite. Where are we? Fourth and fifth, babe, is it, Ellie? Crikey. I think it is for Reed, because AJ mentions running over from one courthouse to another. He would be in a different state for federal court otherwise, I don't think. No, I'm pretty sure it's a Massachusetts federal court that's hearing it. I don't know. I'm confused, but I know he's got his reasons. She said they could come in late on the 5th. Huh. There you go. Where are we? Yeah, so there you go. That's why the other lawyers who are on their stream saying this Tui Rodriguez is a problem, I don't agree it's a problem for the defense. It's not a problem for the defense. It actually supports the defense's argument that they did not agree to mistrial just because they wanted the jury to continue deliberations. It's the opposite. They did not consent to a retrial, and by not having consented at any stage mistrial is what I meant to say. By not having consented at any stage, that they still have not waived rights to double jeopardy. So there you go. I'm glad we got to the bottom of that. The federal court is in Boston. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. 25 minutes away from Dedham. Whoops, yes. I almost clicked bloody hide the user, and I didn't want that. All right, so is there anything else you want me to ask the AI while we're here? Anything you want me to research further? Obviously, I haven't researched whether they're correct about this, but as I understand the small amount of research I did on Allen charge, I do know that that is the opposite, that is actually asking them to continue deliberating. That one I researched. That one I read in the defense's response in the habeas petition. So I know that is correct. I do know that. The Commonwealth's arguments the jury was still deadlocked after these instructions. Mistrial was inevitable, and thus the defense contended. Yep, it's because it's not express. A judge must exhaust all alternatives before declaring a mistrial. The defense was not asked to consent and did not request it. See, the did request it part is what this applies to, saying that they asked the jury to continue deliberating and that they shouldn't feel coerced. That's not requesting a mistrial. So there is no equivalence there at all. Do we think of anything else? After the other live stream cut off. Oh, sorry about that. Yes, kidnapped by the Starlink. I apologize. You want at least one nerd stream per week or month. Why not? I will consider it. Motion granted. Let's do it. I like the geek scream. I know some people don't like it, but that's okay because, only you have control of the stop button. As I have continuously said over and over, and people still don't seem to get it. Thank you. I have been waiting for someone to explain all of that. I'm glad that it was explained understandably. So I appreciate that people can understand it. And as I said, it's difficult to speak in layperson's terms. And so that's the main reason that I use the AI. How do I explain this in layman's terms? Like there's these little tables to lay it out in, an understandable format. That stuff helps. So all these visual aids that the AI gives us, this is what the defense is missing. This is what they needed in their closing arguments. And I think everybody is in agreement with that they just didn't have the visual aids to help the jury understand what it is they were meant to take into account. So Auntie Bev was rotated out of her term. Yes, we know that. Early in 2025, correct. Been trying to explain that and more, but few seem to think it isn't important and would rather debate the details. Yep, that happens all the time, Chuck. I still got people arguing with me. I can show 2,000 case laws that support my argument and they'll still argue. So, I think some people just like to argue. It's not the fact that you might be right or they might be wrong or vice versa. It's just the fact that they like to argue. Maybe they just enjoy arguing. And in that sense, maybe they should be lawyers. Because, lawyering is all about arguing. You've got to be prepared to argue everything. So maybe they should be lawyers. Thank you, Sassy. I'm glad. No word salad. Good God. I don't even feel that that's the case. I feel like I do end up in word salad. Unless I'm doing a pre-record, because then I can hear my own word salad playing back at me, and it's like, yeah, that's 2 word salad. Delete. in my pre-records. Yeah, you're right there. So, so do we have any more questions, class? I think we good. I think we good. Can two people be right at the same time? Well, kinda. When it comes to law, kinda. Like, I've seen even federal court judges disagree with each other on the basis of the law. So does that mean they're both wrong at the same time? Does that mean they're both right at the same time? Does that mean that one's right and one's wrong? I don't know. But I think possibly yes, two people could be right at the same time. When it comes to this stuff, yes. The most important thing, singular, is actually the unsecured and unmonitored crime scene. Yeah. I think Bev's not going to rule on the dismissal, and even granting the Commonwealth to can a hearing for the dismissal. I think she's going to hang on to all that till the very last minute. So, yes, of course, Bob, I gotcha. It's a question, but it's a valid question. Even though you are just joking around, it is a valid question. So, yes, Chuck. The law actually has nothing to do with right. It has to do with statute wording and related case law wording and how you use it to support your argument, right? I think the judge and prosecution are colluding. Yes, AI agrees. AI agrees that the judge and the prosecution are actually colluding. It does. I've done a whole, how would you prove that? Like, does it look that way to the AI? Yes, it does. What things make it look that way to the AI? Everything that we have noticed makes it look that way to the AI, that the judge is actually colluding with them. So, but getting it to investigate, I think insofar as it can investigate, I think we have got to that point. I'm pretty sure. If you look over my last videos, you'll see that we actually have got it to investigate all of that, especially in the judicial immunity up in smoke video. That one, we definitely got into the nitty gritty of whether the AI thinks that that's possible. But more to the point, how would the defense prove that that is what's happening? So, the defense is privy to stuff, sidebars and transcripts and stuff that we're not. So that's the kind of stuff that they would use to prove it if they were going to argue it. There's a very fine line right now between taking out the judge, like riding the judge's backside with all of this stuff all at once and ending up with her at trial 2.0, and then you've completely made her an enemy. You know what I mean? And that, I will just add, the reason that other lawyers who are actually currently practicing are not saying these things on their live streams about Bev. Some are still saying, oh, I don't know that it's biased, on the fence. And that's why, because if they end up in a freaking Massachusetts court, pro hac vice, and they've got to face her, then, they've actually made public comments about her, so they don't want to do that. It's a little gutless in my book, but nonetheless, that's why they're hesitant to say she is biased. That's the hesitation that the defense currently has. What if we end up with her at the other end? What if all of us end up like? That's especially true for Yannetti, because he practices in Boston. Of course, he's going to end up in front of these judges again. So whoever he puts on offside now, in this case, he's still going to practice in front of them in the future. So you got to be very careful who you're going to put offside. By the totality, Chuck, I agree with you. I agree with you. I do believe that the AI agrees with us too. Bev is oftentimes rushing them. She never does it to the prosecution. Right. So there's all these little culminative hints that we've all got ourselves that add up to that she is colluding with the prosecution. Oh man, we all want to see that, Squirrel. All of us want to see if Bev's in that. Scotty says, I've known Bev to be in collusion with Michael Morrissey for over 30 years plus. Right, but how do you prove it? Like, you know it, we know it, we're all aware of it, but how do you prove it? Because if you're going to make that allegation in court, you got to prove it. She's a political appointee, exactly. That is part of proving it, right? How many alts does he have? Good question. We all want to see the alts. We want to see how much communication he's had with Bev, right? Here's another thing. Here's something we can ask the AI, because I want to know, is it proper here? Is it proper for the prosecution to what's the word? To be the taint team, I guess. To be the taint team for the DA's communications that have been entered, or that have been, all the communications, were they in a motion? They were in a motion, weren't they? I think that's what it was. That have been included in a previous motion. We'll just leave it at that. I won't get too specific, but I just want to know if it's proper for the prosecution to be the tape team and not an independent source. Maybe I should have said that. Hey, bada boom, bada bing. It's a conflict of interest. Straight up. So this is where Hanky's saying, I decided I'm going to be the one to look over Morrissey's emails. It is improper, completely improper. Let's get this up on the screen for you. Anyway, we're still going. We're still thinking. Conflict of interest. Should the prosecution serve as a taint team for the DA's communications? No, it is not proper for the prosecution to serve as the taint team, also known as a privilege review team, for communications involving the district attorney's office, especially if those communications are part of a motion alleging misconduct, Brady violations, or improper influence. We're stuck. We have a problem, Houston. Aussie Insider has abused her paid account this month, and the AI is tripping over its own feet. His mother is employed. Yes, I know there's all of this stuff. There is a lot of stuff that actually could allude to, that could support the argument that there's collusion. Absolutely. Oh my God. Come on, AI. Especially if those communications are part of a motion alleging misconduct, Brady violations, or improper influence over evidence and witnesses. What is a taint team? A taint team is an independent group, usually separate from the prosecution team, separate from everybody, assigned to review potentially privileged or protected materials such as attorney-client communications, internal DA office emails, or government records. The purpose of a taint team is to prevent conflicts of interest, not to be the conflict of interest, by ensuring that privileged or improperly obtained material does not influence the prosecution's case. Why the prosecution cannot serve as its own taint team. Conflict of interest, obviously. The legal standard is United States versus Neal, 1997. Courts have ruled that prosecutors reviewing their own tainted evidence creates an impermissible, holy shit, that's a pretty heavy word, conflict of interest. In research warrants issued by the Fourth Circuit 2019, the court held that using a government tape team instead of an independent reviewer creates a due process concern. Oh my God, now we're getting into constitutional protections. United States versus Stewart, 2002, the court required a neutral special master rather than allowing the prosecution to determine what was privileged. Indeed. Why this applies here, if the DA's communications are part of a motion alleging misconduct, then the prosecutors have a vested interest in protecting those communications from exposure. Dun, dun, dun. Allowing them to be the taint team gives an unchecked power to withhold or filter material that could be damaging to their case, i.e. communications with Arnie Bev, maybe? Let's ask that question. I've got more to read, but before I read on, okay, that was one, the conflict of interest. So we're up to 2 Brady violations. So the next question I would ask is, what if those communications include private discussions between the DA and the judge. Dun, dun, dun. All right, we'll read through the response first before we ask this next question. They can't investigate themselves. Exactly. It's stupid. Stupid with a capital S. Cheryl with a capital S. Chuck says, I live in Philly and I'm 66 years old now. I have known that the idea of conflict of interest disappeared with the war on drugs and the law has been changed to benefit the state or the government. I don't know, because I'm pretty sure conflict of interest is still pretty relevant in federal case law and constitutional law. So to say that the states have done that, yes, I would probably agree with you in that sense. Yes. Video idea, Tennessee versus David Swift. Karen Swift murder trial, judge questioning hung jury. Split to Betero on Melanie's stream, asking how will we know the split. I don't know if anyone else here but me would like it. Okay, thank you for that video idea. I will keep that in mind. Those before the 1980s, few people on the ground grew up around or saw TV actually supported the government. No one trusted them. Right. Interesting. All right, so let's read on here. The Brady violations. The prosecution cannot be trusted to self-review. The legal standard, Brady versus Maryland, the prosecution must disclose any material evidence favorable to the defense. In Kyles versus Whitley in 1995, the Supreme Court emphasized that the prosecutors have a duty to speak out and disclose favorable evidence, even if it exists within government agencies. United States versus Sintolo, 1987, held that selective disclosure by prosecutors violates due process. Why this applies here, if the prosecution is allowed to self-review its own misconduct-related communications, it has every incentive to suppress or mischaracterize exculpatory material. Past conduct already shows that the prosecution has selectively disclosed evidence, and an independent special master is needed to ensure that no Brady material is being suppressed. And number 3, under Massachusetts case law and ethics concerns, so we've got Rules of Professional Conduct 3.8, Special responsibilities of the prosecutor prohibit prosecutors from overseeing their own misconduct reviews. And then under Commonwealth versus O'Neill, 2006, the prosecution's duty is to ensure fairness, not to control its own conduct, not to control review of its own conduct. Okay, how this applies here. The DA's communications may include discussions about evidence suppression, case strategy, or possible judicial influence. The same prosecutors accused of misconduct cannot be trusted to decide what they should disclose. Proper alternatives to a prosecutor-led team would be a special master, a judge-led in-camera review, an independent review team. The worst possible option is allowing the prosecution to serve as its own team, as it creates a conflict of interest and undermines due process. So one question people do ask is, why haven't the defense jumped up and down about this? Is because you got to give them the rope. If you don't give them the rope, they won't hang themselves. So they started suggesting, well, we'll be our own tank team. And then the defense objects and said, well, they can't be because of this law and this case law and that case law. And then the judge prevents it. Now it's not an issue. So now they can't use it in appeal or anything. If they let them hang themselves, let them suggest they want to be their own tank team, let the judge accept it, or let them hang themselves, now you can use it. It's not remedied. Okay? If it's not remedied, now it's an issue. All right. What if the judge and the DA colluded? Oh, the implications of private communications between the DA and the judge. If the DA's communications include private discussions with the judge, this escalates the situation from a conflict of interest to potential judicial misconduct and due process violations. And dun dun dun, do we know that that's why they want to be their own tank team? Yes, of course we do. Right? Linda says, except that this lot seem to rule themselves and make up their own rules and are supported by the judge. Right. But the more often that they do that, Linda, the more rope they're getting to hang themselves, essentially. So we're just adding to this cumulative list of judicial misconduct and prosecutorial misconduct. The legal issues raised by private DA judge communications is that it violates due process under the 14th Amendment. Any communications between the judge and the DA is not the nature of those communications. The 14th Amendment guarantees a fair trial before an impartial judge. In Toomey versus Ohio, 1927, a judge who has private communications with one party compromises the fairness of the trial, and even the appearance of partiality is enough to violate due process. And sorry, that was in Murchison, which we've also mentioned before, and also Massey Cole, we've mentioned this as well. Private discussions between a judge and an interested party require recusal. Bum, bum, bum. There you go. Why this is a problem here: if the DA and the judge were communicating privately about the case, this creates an unconstitutional bias in favour of the prosecution. And even if the communications were not overtly improper, the mere fact that they occurred undermines the public confidence in the fairness of the trial. And do you remember that the whole reason this is even in question is because the DA did have private communications with and other communications with other judges. So we know he's communicating with the judges. So this didn't just happen in a vacuum. So let me add that as a note here, because we'll pull that apart. Let's say the whole reason this motion came up is because the DA was forced to disclose he had communications with other judge. In a connected case with Reed. Involving Commonwealth witnesses. In a connected case involving Commonwealth witnesses. So the whole reason this motion came up is because the DA was forced to disclose he had communications with other judges in a connected case. So we'll come back to that and see what AI thinks about that. Where were we? We were somewhere here, weren't we? What this means for the defense. Any rulings influenced by private communications should be challenged. The defense must move for disclosure of all private communications between the DA and the judge. Duh. Well, that's what we're doing. Violation of Massachusetts judicial conduct rules. So she's not allowed to be in communication with the judge. A judge's private discussions with the prosecution violates due process. So if the DA and the judge communicated about trial strategy, evidence rulings, or suppression issues, this is grounds for recusal and possibly dismissal of charges. Dun, dun, dun. We're back here again. Oh my God. The judge should be asked on record whether they had ex parte communications with the prosecution. Yeah. They could ask her on record. Huh. They can ask her on record. Interesting. Prosecutors in the US have absolute immunity, right? But here's the thing. The fact that they have absolute immunity and you can't sue them for it is totally aside of the fact that these are due process and violations of federal and constitutional law. There's two completely different things. Sure, you can't punish them for it, but can you get the case dismissed for it, over it? Yes. Can you get all the things that you need to have happen in this case to have it dismissed? Yes. Can you take to the habeas? Yes. Can you appeal on it? Yes. So immunity is a completely separate issue here. Let's just remember that. Because I am not looking into all of this because I want to see them punished. I don't need to see people punished. I want to see them exposed publicly because of what they're doing. That's a good start. And I would like to see the case be dropped because of what they're doing. So all of that is good. So let's not get confused about, wanting them punished to getting positive outcomes in the case, because they're completely separate to each other. What are the implications of this? All right, conflict of interest, the prosecution reviewing its own judge-related communications. Obviously, we got conflict of interest. Defense strategy, so they can file an emergency motion to preserve those communications. I'm sure that's what they did. Move for the judge to disclose any private. They haven't done that yet, because I just don't think they're ready to burn this judge yet. The request a special master to review the communications. Seek judicial recusal if ex parte communications did occur, and argue for dismissal. So now I want to say, the whole reason this motion came up is because the DA did have communications with other judges. Well, let's have a look at the implications of this. I'm really not checking or double checking the AI responses here. We're just taking it on face value that because I have been asking it questions and correcting it and researching and doing this on these same questions for the past couple of days, that it's on the same page already. We're just going to assume that for now. Otherwise, I would be checking it. So the implications of the DA's disclosed communications with other judges in a connected case involving Commonwealth witnesses. The district attorney's forced disclosure that he had communications with other judges in other connected cases involving these same witnesses is highly problematic and carries serious legal and ethical consequences. Below are the key implications for the defense, the prosecution, and the integrity of the trial. Let me have a drink. Okay. Ex parte judicial communications are a due process violation. So remember, due process, that's the Constitution. So this has nothing to do with their immunity or the state rules or anything. This is back to federal habeas. Legal standard. A judge who has, in Toomey versus Ohio, a judge who has private discussions with an interested party violates due process. Murchison, even the appearance of a judicial bias or ex parte discussions undermines the fairness of a trial. And under Massey Cole, a judge impartiality is compromised if they engage in private discussions with one party about a related case. So we just did all that in the previous section. Why this is a problem here, the DA communicated with multiple judges about a case involving Commonwealth witnesses. This suggests potential judicial bias and case coordination, i.e. collusion, outside the proper legal channels. Judges cannot discuss active cases with prosecutors unless the defense is present. We all saw this in the YSL trial. Even if those communications were about another case, the fact that they involve Commonwealth witnesses in this case raises serious due process concerns. Yes, we've demanded full disclosure, and Arnie Bev said no. Pretty sure that's one of the denied motions that she just ruled on. Moved to have the judge state on the record whether they were influenced by these discussions. I absolutely didn't know that that was an option. I didn't think they could do that. I thought the judge could have them for contempt or something. So seek recusal of any judge who engaged in ex parte communications. So, bear in mind, these are also actions that Aidan Carney's defense could be taking as well, because those were the specific communications that we're talking about in his case. He can seek recusal of any judge who engaged in ex parte discussions about his case. And also question any of the rulings that they've made in his case, those judges. Judicial misconduct and the appearance of bias. Yes, of course. Oh my God, I just twigged. This is why Attorney Betterow is being brought in pro hac vice, because of all his involvement in this side of it, the judicial bias side of it. Guys, we could be heading into judicial bias actually being addressed and not avoided anymore. That may be what Betterow's pro hac vice signals. Yeah, that just sort of like bing bing clicked in my head just then. All right, the legal standard. We've been through all of these. The Code of Judicial Conduct. Judge must not engage in ex parte communications. The Judicial Rule 12.11a, judge must recuse themselves if their impartiality might reasonably be questioned. And whatever that is. 2017, I can't say that word. Private discussions between a judge and a prosecutor are grounds for reversal. Why this is a problem here, a judge presiding over the defendant's case was involved in these improper communications. if a judge, yes, their rulings may have been influenced by information not on the official record. If another judge influenced the presiding judge's decisions, this is third-party judicial interference, which undermines the legitimacy of all rulings made in the case. Dun, dun, dun. All the rulings made in the case. Holy henna. So it just gets bigger and bigger. Defense action. Request a full record of communications between the DA and any judges. Well, that's where we are at. File a motion for an evidentiary hearing into judicial impartiality. We haven't got to that part. I have a feeling that might be what Better is coming on board for. Request recusal or reassignment of any judge involved in these communications. So yeah, we're getting a better picture of why Better is jumping on board here. I think a stronger picture of it. Let me come back to your comments. We can imagine if Bev was Aiden's judge, Aiden would be facing the gallows. Indeed, she hates him, doesn't she? Yep, MA was the problem there. Also, all objections required a reason. Yep. They have a lot of brilliant people. Yes. Yes, I agree, Linda. They do. I do. Brennan mentioned disdain for Bettero's involvement. Yes. Excuse me. I think the writing on the wall is that their collusion with the judge is about to erupt into the public realm. I think that's the writing on the wall here. The DA's conflict of interest and misuse of authority under Brady versus Maryland, the Giglio, obviously, rules of conduct 3.8. If the DA influenced judges in a connected case involving these witnesses, it suggests a coordinated strategy to control case outcomes. And it absolutely was a coordinated strategy because they were trying to bang Total Boy up so that they could connect him to Karen Reed in the witness intimidation charges. So yes, it absolutely was. The DA cannot ethically advocate in front of judges with whom they have had improper communications. Defense action moved to disqualify the DA and their office. Well, we did that already. Come on now, AI. We've already done this. Demand an independent review of the DA's role in judicial interference. The final summary is has got a column of issues, why it's a problem, and the actions that the defense can take. So we know it's ex parte communication. We know it violates due process. We know they can demand disclosures now. I didn't know they could demand it of the judge, but there you go. They can ask her for full transparency. Multiple judges coordinating on related cases, full transparency, potential influence on rulings in this case. They can ask for an evidentiary hearing on judicial impartiality, prosecutorial misconduct, and Brady violations, because the DA, and we know they can seek disqualifications, but they have been overruled with that. Potential grounds for dismissal if the judge, and we're on the dismissal motion. So there you go. So it's pretty good to see that the defense is all, on the right track. AI agrees with what we're doing. What they're doing, rather. So, who's the witch in 2024, 2025? When all is said and done, Chuck says, with the Karen Reed case, there are going to be changes in Massachusetts. Do you think so? The corrupt have snitched on themselves in a very public way. I think that the connected cases, the Sandra Birchmore case, the Karen Reed case, the Enrique case, I can't think of his name, the trooper that died, I think that all of them have actually cause them to snitch on themselves. It's funny how anyone can be a witch today too if you have different opinions, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying it, Linda. We do a little booting when people get out of control, so that's part of what, makes it nicer here. So anyone who is going to create a ruckus is already in the ban bin. So my last few live streams, I have had no restrictions on anyone. Anyone can join, anyone can chat. No restrictions whatsoever, but those who create a ruckus are already gone. So Scott McGuinness, with some of it, the government in Massachusetts will have no choice. There are unconstitutional things that got brought to light. In that case, everything must be challenged or it will stand. Indeed, Chuck, you are correct. Indeed. Yes, they are. Yes, I get what you're saying with the witch hunt, for sure. Because Massachusetts is the home of the Salem witch trials. Okay. There you go. Exactly. So, pursuant to the line of questioning we have been asking, do we have any more questions? Class? Any questions of the AI before we wrap it up? I'm glad we looked into that because it kind of is showing you that the one thing that they're afraid of most is those communications between DA Morris and other judges coming out, because all of it is bad. Like, even if it's not with Judge Bepp, all of it is bad. Any communications between DA and anyone he's prosecuting, their judges, all bad. Bev's hair. You win, Colin. I cannot explain Bev's hair. Cannot. I concede you win. What's for dinner? It's actually breakfast here. It's brekkie here. What's for breakfast? Probably some spicy fruit loaf toast or something along those lines. Okay, I think we're done. I'm done. 2 hours here, just over an hour over there, 3 hours. Yeah, we're done. When do you get your degree in the... I already got my degrees for my researchers. This is just what I do for fun. I'm a fun person in real life because all I do for fun is research. Yes, Bev thinks she's untouchable. I don't know that she's going to stay untouchable. So Scotty had some concerns that she was going to remain untouchable because she's she's in this for life and so on. But I kind of feel like there's a few things here that go beyond judicial immunity and move into criminal activity. So that's the point where judges are no longer immune when they're moving into criminal activity. Yeah, she's kind of on the verge of that shit. So I'm not so sure she's completely untouchable. Depends what else comes to light, right? We've already got enough that puts her on the border. So all we need is that one more thing, i.e. the DA Center Communications. Bam, she's over the freaking edge into full, she has colluded and committed a crime. So completely different situation once we have evidence of that. So is this the team that's going to do it? Possibly. Do they have the manpower and the intelligence and the coordination between them to be able to do it? Yep. Do they have the drive and the reason to do it? Yep. So, this might be the last team she ever does deal with. Because she has moved beyond what she is judicially immune to. So, DG says, my question isn't for the AI, but I'd like to know if the video of Higgins on the phone could have influenced the judge to allow preservation or forensic analysis. He's destroyed the phone. There's no remedy. No, I don't believe it would have influenced her. I believe she would have let them hide it, continue hiding it, even probably help them continue hiding it from the defense, and still ruled the way as she did. I'm past the point of thinking that this judge would have ruled differently on anything, no matter what. So that's just me, though. Bev is 64. Hang up the robe and go away, Bev. We've had enough of your face. We have had enough of you. Completely agree with you, Scott. I mean, heck, you've had to deal with her for how long? This is our first dealing for those of us overseas, and we've already had enough of her. So Bev was overheard saying, Lally, you are my son. Really? Is that true? Between Karen Reid and, yeah, absolutely. Is that true? I don't know. No local ties other than Lenetti. Yannetti, but yes. But you seriously do go to the Cape to never be heard from again. I've heard that there's been murders out there. I have heard. I think I was looking into. I went down a rabbit hole there at one point. What case was Proctor and I can't remember who investigating when they went on that trip and bought all those beers and he bought a whole carton of beer or something. I was looking into that in the AI investigation. I thought, what case were they investigating? And there ended up being a whole bunch of them out near the Cape, like murders and stuff out at the Cape. So that's a good one. That's brilliant. Someone in Emily D. Baker's members only stream argued that Trooper Paul's testimony was hearsay because it was the crime scene that told him. I love it. I love it. Video of Higgy on the phone may not have got the defence's motion for Higgy's full phone records one. No, I'm firmly of the belief that nothing was going to change her mind. She's protecting them, and she's going to do what she's going to do to protect them. So it might have made it more difficult on record to justify why she's going to not allow the defense's motion, but I don't think it would have changed her mind. I think she's not afraid of what's on record. Well, up to this federal habeas petition being filed, yeah, I don't believe she has ever cared what was on record of her doing what, but I do believe that she's in a sticky situation right now. Morrissey and Bev look like brother and sister. I know you're not being flippant because I think they do too, but you know, I'm Asperger's. I always get people's faces like wrong. That was Kevin Albert who lost the gun. Yeah, thank you. I knew it was the AI. Wasn't it Kevin Albert and Michael Proctor who went on that trip? Or was it Kevin Albert and I forget. It was in the AI investigation, but yeah. Technically that is correct as far as yeah, well it is, right? It is. Alright guys, I am ready for breakfast. So I'm gonna hang up, go eat some fruity, toasty loaf, and get my morning underway. It's 7 a.m. here, so I got some stuff to do out in the paddock today. Everyone have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining us on both streams. Much appreciated. We shall talk to you again when I hit the live button at some time in the future. So be good or be good at it. Bye.